Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for Boruto episode 216, and yeah, what a big episode this was. Definitely had the high quality animation, it had the super important content, it was the big fight that we've been waiting for, and we got quite a lot of content, like a lot of progress in the fight. This was not one of those fights where they spend the whole first section building up and really the only part of the fight that matters is the second part. No, we were straight down to business, and then even on the other side of the episode, more of the explanation stuff, we still got to learn more about sort of the Otsuki Plan and the sort of significance of Boruto in all of this. That for the most part, Ishiki isn't really thinking too much about oh Momoshiki matters. It's more that, oh, with Boruto, that means we have sort of another Otsutsuki basically in play. And the big reveal is, of course, that part of the plan is that Ishiki needs Boruto to sacrifice, feed to the Ten Tails, and that is how you basically feed the divine tree to make it a divine tree. Is a Otsutsuki is sacrificed to the Ten Tails, and that's how we get the divine tree. So that's a new piece of information that we didn't know about before, and kind of has you really get thinking about things. This is why the Otsutsuki come to planets in pairs. One of them is higher ranked than the other, with the idea that one of them always is sacrificed, and the other sort of collects the chakra fruit at the end. We also learned on that side of the episode that Kaguya was actually the lower ranked of the two, meaning Ishiki is actually higher up in the clan than Kaguya was, but she obviously went against that, which is very interesting to think about, because we knew there was this dynamic, the hierarchy of the Otsutsukis, because it was very clear that Kinshiki was below Momoshiki, and so on. So, you know, that's very interesting. Again, I think later on in Boruto, we're going to be getting, I think, really heavily into the Otsutsukis, and it's going to be fascinating to learn more about the sort of structure, especially the top and sort of like the heads of the clan. But I think that's a long way off in the future. But we know more about the Otsutsukis now than we sort of ever really did before. Before we get into the fight, I suppose the last sort of section of things to cover with those characters, like Amado, Kawaki, Sumire, and so on, is just that Kawaki wakes up and discovers, of course, that his karma mark is gone. He also discovers that Boruto, Naruto, and Sasuke are all fighting Ishiki, and basically the dynamic that they're playing with here is that Kawaki wants to get involved in the fight, but he now realizes that he doesn't really have the power to get involved in that fight, and Amado asks him the question. That's fascinating now to just consider that, like, when you don't have any of the content that happens after this, it's fascinating to consider that, oh yeah, all we really know with Kawaki is that eventually we have to get to that point in the future where he and Boruto are on opposite sides of things. He gets the karma again. So prompting the question, Amado asking, like, is it your powerlessness that makes you sort of upset at this point? Or is it grief over the loss of having that power? The difference being the idea of powerlessness is just like you wish you could help, and it's more focused on the positive aspects of that. Or is it more that you are sort of almost like fearful of not having the thing that made you so powerful anymore? Which is a Kawaki. And obviously Kawaki gets quite upset at this, the possibility that the karma, the thing that has, you know, defined his life of late, he's been considered only a vessel by having this mark. He should be absolutely happy to be rid of it, but he's rid of it right at the point at which he sort of needed it to fight and help out, and that's the big dynamic here. So that's kind of interesting. Other than that, it is all about the fight. So effectively, most of this it's Naruto and Sasuke against Ishiki, and Boruto sort of stays off at the back. But inevitably, Boruto is forced into the action because, of course, it is revealed that Ishiki can't just kill Boruto because he needs Boruto alive to feed to the Ten Tails. So that creates a bit of a dynamic in the fight that, okay, Ishiki can hurt Boruto so long as he doesn't kill him. That's something. Like, Boruto isn't just going to be wiped out in this fight, but it creates more of an importance for Boruto. For the most part, they adapted the fight pretty accurately. They made, I'd say, two sort of key changes in the fight. One was with the scene where it sort of revealed that Ishiki can't kill Boruto, where, like, in the middle of the fight, like, Sasuke and Boruto become aware that, like, oh, why isn't he killing you, Boruto? How have you figured out that this is why he can't kill you? In the manga, what happens is that Sasuke is sort of on the ground, Boruto rushes over, and Ishiki, the way he is about to kill Sasuke, is to stab Sasuke with his own sword. And Boruto tries to, like, dive over his body, but right as he's about to sort of stab through both of them, he stops. And that's the hesitation moment. That's what, you know, allows Boruto to latch on to the idea that you can't kill me, can you? Obviously, here in the anime, they changed that and had it be this thing where Sasuke gets smashed into the wall and Boruto's taking the rocks out. That's why the two are next to each other. And then Ishiki is about to attack Boruto with the chakra rods. So Sasuke swaps places, so he gets, like, covered with all those chakra rods, really viciously kind of stabbed, like the first fight. And then Sasuke is about to be squished by one of Ishiki's cubes that he makes big again. And Boruto gets underneath it and uses the Rasengan to try and keep it up. And you can see it's a pretty cool moment where you see, like, Boruto's power. He uses everything he has. I think it even turns into, like, the high compression Rasengan and stuff like that. And you feel like he's nearly about to get rid of it. And it's kind of a Ishiki, like, testing Boruto, like, how far will you go? Because the second Boruto sort of collapses under the weight of it, Ishiki then just shrinks it and gets rid of it because he can't kill him. I think this is a little bit of a one where, like, I wouldn't have minded if they did it either way. I can see there's a sort of cool factor with the whole sword situation, especially given that, like, the opening sort of salvo of this fight was Sasuke throwing the sword, and the sword turned out to be Boruto. So Ishiki getting rid of Sasuke with his own sword kind of has a bit of a story aspect to the fight, whereas the way we got it, it's a bit more brutal. It involves sort of Ishiki's sort of fighting gimmick of this fight, that being the ability to, like, instantly just materialize these giant cubes out of anywhere. And from an animation point of view, they're doing really high quality animation here. I can understand why they're like, we can either do a scene where Ishiki tries to stab him on the ground, or we can do this kind of cool sequence where Sasuke swaps places, Boruto does this Rasengan, and there's a big cube coming down. You know, visually that's kind of cooler. They achieve effectively the same thing. The main difference, though, is that I think the anime sort of gets across, like, Boruto putting his all into this fight, having something to do, something to fight against, where it makes sense, like, can he push this giant cube away or not? He's not quite able to. And I'm kind of fine with that. It's also maybe a little bit more brutal because Sasuke does get kind of riddled with those chakra rods. So I can see that being either way. The point of the fight that I thought was much better done here in the anime than it was in the manga was the arrival of Naruto back into the fight and the reveal of Baryon mode. So in the manga, the way that this is done is that the whole scene of Naruto and Ishiki fighting, like, one-on-one, Naruto getting riddled with chakra rods and then crushed between two cubes, that doesn't happen in the manga. In the manga, you basically get the scene where he first brings the cubes down, and Naruto says, like, oh, it was just one of my shadow clones that got hit. I can't find you. And they get across the idea that, you know, the cubes have, like, anti-chakra sensing capabilities. Plus, they've brought up a whole, cloud of dust, so Naruto can't really see that well, and he can't sense very well. And effectively, the whole reason this sequence of Sasuke and Boruto on their own happens without Naruto in the manga is just because Naruto can't find them and is running around the battlefield trying to locate them. This is where I think, the anime did it better, whereas at least Naruto is taken out of the fight before that sequence happens. Whereas there's always a little bit of a sense of like, okay, I get you've constructed the idea of like he can't find them because of sensing reasons, but it comes across, I think, a little bit better here, where like, no, Naruto was properly defeated. Like, in this case, it gets across that idea very clearly, where they don't just get sort of like beaten up a bit. They get the same level of kind of treatment as they did in the first fight, where they both get sort of riddled with chakra rods, and they are both like properly, Naruto and Sasuke both get defeated, basically. Not killed, but they're more or less out of the fight. And so Naruto being trapped between these two cubes, barely being able to keep himself from being squished, is an excellent way to keep him out of the fight, to have that whole sequence happen where Boruto's importance is presented to us. And then the other aspect is that when he finally rejoins the fight, of course, in the manga it's just, oh, I finally found you. In his normal mode, like no chakra mode activated, he just comes in, kicks Ishiki, and then as he's charging towards him to sort of initiate the fight, that's when he sort of has most of the scene with Kurama, and the mode activates. Here, though, I thought it was much better in terms of the scaling, in terms of power of the fight. I think it makes much more sense that the sort of kick away happens when Naruto is in this mode. Because it gets across that, yeah, of course, it doesn't really make a lot of sense that Naruto in his base form is able to kick Ishiki away when Ishiki is like 3 times more powerful than he was in the first fight. Naruto has to use this new form to have the ability to even like move Ishiki, highlighting that this is the only thing that is equivalent to Ishiki that any of these characters really have in this fight. So that came across to me a lot better. It also made so much more of a kind of build up to it, just that idea of Ishiki's convinced that Naruto's out of the fight. And then he looks and sees something flying towards him like a shooting star. And he gets closer and closer, and you get a brief glimpse of like the general color scheme of what Naruto is sort of transformed into. And then Ishiki gets hit. That's what saves Boruto from being further injured. And then you get the moment where immediately Naruto lands, and Boruto is able to look up and see, as it's revealed to us, what the form is. Versus the manga where Naruto appears, he's in his normal form, and then he just activates the mode as he kind of walks towards Ishiki. Again, there are rather subtle differences, but I think in terms of this is a hugely hype moment, this generated hype, I think, better than it did in the previous scene. The other thing is, of course, the emotion of this. That this is Naruto. Like, Naruto and Sasuke are the two most powerful sort of hero characters in the series at this point. Their power level is not good enough. Do they have a level above this? And as far as we've known up to now, they haven't. So what's going on here? And so I really like the reveal that Naruto actually has this other form. Kurama is the one who actually knows about it, because I suppose he's more locked into this more technical side of things and understands sort of this is an energy-based mode. This will give you the power that you need. But it will kill you. Are you prepared to die for this? And it's just that discussion about, I'm only saying this now, Naruto, because you're going to die if I don't mention it. And even though this ability will kill you, it at least will let you, you know, fight against Ishiki at a relatively equal level. And I thought it was a really nice build-up to it, because it feels like, oh yeah, like they're building up the idea that this is the like main character of the franchise. Is this going to be his final stand? Are they going to have Naruto like do enough to take Ishiki out but die in the process. That's what's going to happen here. And I thought they got the emotion of it across pretty well with him saying that, like, I'm the Hokage, I protect everyone in the village. I've been prepared for this since then. No, I've been prepared for this since the second I wanted to become Hokage. That, like, I've known what the role means the whole time. And it fits, again, the idea of, like, sort of like Minato, you know, sacrificing himself for the village, you know, Sarutobi doing the same. You know, Naruto's seen other Hokage in the past do this, and now it feels like this is his time to do the same. And so there is that build-up of, like, are they committing here to the, you know, quote-unquote death of Naruto? It's an interesting one because you're thinking about this and, like, oh, are they going to kill him off? But then you realize that, oh yeah, in chapter 1 they did say that, like, Kawaki sent Naruto somewhere. And there's still some time to work with, but it's like, does that spoil what does or does not happen? But either way, the emotion of this scene was huge. And I like that they were able to have this conversation as sort of equals, sort of knowing that, based on what was said here, Naruto dies, that means, I suppose, Kurama technically dies, but will be reborn, as we sort of know the tail beasts do. But it would be the end of their partnership, the end of their friendship. And Kurama is going to help Naruto to do this. There's a sort of, like, yeah, they're working together. They've been working together this whole time, basically, since towards the end of Naruto. But here is Kurama, you know, understanding Naruto enough to where I'll help you achieve this mode. It'll kill you, but it'll allow you to do what you want to do. And I respect that. So, you know, that was a nice moment to have. I thought visually they did it quite well with the idea of, like, he's in that sort of inner mind space where he talks to Kurama, but he's, like, upside down. And then as his sort of commitment to what he wants to do becomes clearer and clearer, he gradually, like, turns upright. So visually that worked really nicely, as well as, like, I think the colors, I think, were done really good as well. As for, I suppose, Baryon mode, we do get a close-up look at it here, whereas the manga chapter that we basically ended on ends without really showing you the mode. It's a bit of a tease. I'll try and get to the scene here. So, yeah, as you can see here, this is a chapter 51 right at the end. They, on the previous page, show you what it looks like from behind. But they just end with a slight glimpse of, like, the side of his eye. So, little bit of a tease there. But cover page for chapter 52, they do show you the mode in full in color. And it's pretty accurate. I think Naruto's clothing is a bit darker here than it's shown here. But still, the core of the mode, I think, is really cool. And I suppose that's probably one of the final things to end on here is how well done is this visual, you know, new mode for Naruto. I think it's quite good. Like, a lot of his more recent modes, like his high power modes, is just sort of Naruto with some markings and he's glowing, and then he can do stuff by, like, projecting his chakra out of that. With this, I kind of like that the default form already has sort of, like, nine tails, you know, kind of appendages coming off it. And that it incorporates more of the, you know, he has, like, eye markings as well that basically are like fox ears, basically. So it's, I like that it's more of a sense that it's him and Ninetales completely at one. Like, they've always supplied sort of, you know, power to each other. Like Ninetales lives inside Naruto. Naruto uses Kurama's chakra, that sort of thing. But this is them sort of, like, together as one. It feels like sort of, you know, full-on Avatar state type thing for the two of them. Where, you know, they're going to put everything into this. And so that's why more of the fox kind of is coming out in this instance. And it's obviously reminiscent of some of, like, the earlier sort of transformations where, like, Naruto wasn't fully in control about, like, what will happen when more of the tails comes out of the cloak. But this is kind of like, no, it's like the fox is almost like physically beginning to kind of come out of him. But while still maintaining sort of a humanoid form. And I think it just looks very cool. It to me puts together the kind of benefits of both the sort of energy-based chakra modes as well as the cool factor of just the markings from like a Sage mode, which I think is one of people's favorite modes for Naruto. It's one of mine. So I like that it's that mix, and it feels kind of like majestic, basically, that like even Sasuke's like, whoa, like what is this? I've never seen this before. Like Naruto's capable of achieving this other level, and we'll get the explanation on it, I guess, next week. Because we don't really know what the full like scope of this is. Like you assume, like any power up, he's going to be faster and he's going to be stronger. But is there anything more to it, given that it results in death? In that, I suppose the only equivalent that we really have is 8 Gates, when Guy did it. And they got across that really well. But again, the idea of, similar to here, like red chakra. Like Naruto's usually like orange, but he's like super like dark orange, like bordering into red, sort of, with a lot of this. So I think that's cool, just to have that connection of just the idea of like red death type thing going on, given that they're sort of sacrificial jutsu to a degree. And so it's just like, yeah, okay, big stuff coming up next. How's this gonna go? The other thing is, of course, that like Sasuke really wasn't up to much in the fight, and I know that will upset people, but the whole dynamic of this fight was meant to be that Naruto and Sasuke were not on the level to take on Ishiki. Ishiki is more powerful. They knew going in that effectively their roles were just to stay in the fight as long as possible, drag this out as much as possible, that they say they need to spend like a day or two here in this fight, and that's their role. That you knew sort of going in that their opportunity to defeat him is pretty low. So, you know, that's the other factor here. And I suppose that's maybe one of the things where, like, you'd say, like, okay, in terms of a high-quality animation episode, like, I think some of the best animation comes out when the fights are sort of more sort of equal, or there's more of a sense where you can do a full sequence of, like, your hero character defeating the villain. Here, it felt a little bit more sort of stop-start, because a lot of it, even though it was nicely animated, was Naruto does a really cool, like, double Rasengan thing, charges in, Ishiki shrinks it, small taijutsu sequence, and then Naruto's smashed away. It doesn't allow you to do, like, a full, really, really strong, like, minute-long taijutsu sequence. Again, because of the dynamic of the fight going on here, there's not much reason for Naruto and Sasuke to use giant jutsu, because we saw from the first fight that they don't really work against Ishiki's skill set. So it was nicely animated, but it maybe wasn't as bombastic with the animation as it maybe could have been, just because the nature of the fight means that they have to keep it sort of rather contained. Which obviously begs the question with the Baryon mode now, what's Naruto going to do here? What does this open up the door for him to do? Or is it just this, literally in terms of power speed, puts him on the level of Ishiki? We'll have to see. So I think that's basically everything that I wanted to talk about here. I thought they did this really, really well. Like I said, there's two changes really in the fight. One of them I thought was 100% justified and made the episode better than I think the manga sequence. The other one you can maybe argue a little bit about, but given that they were doing high quality animation, I understand them going for a little bit more of a visually interesting sequence that gave Boruto a little bit more to do, and it was a little bit more sort of violent as well in terms of Sasuke being like properly defeated in the fight. So they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.